Hey guys, my name's Mannequin and welcome back to Mastering EDM with Logic Pro. As you might be able to tell, this is not actually the other project I was working on in the previous 4 episodes. This is the last episode in this particular mini-series, and I wanted to talk about effects and kind of their purpose, placement, and general use throughout a track. How much should you use them, how much is overusing, how much is not using enough. But in order to do that, I kind of wanted to have like a fully fleshed out track that I spent a lot of time on, and I didn't get any studio time this week, so I couldn't do it with that other track. So, in order to bring you guys the topic that I wanted to cover, I had to switch over to a different track here. So this is my remix of Shadowlands by Matthew Parker, and I can't say it's my best mix by any means, but it does utilize effects rather well, I don't think I overuse effects that much in this one. I do a little bit, but for the most part, it's pretty solid in how it's laid out, which is kind of why I chose this one and decided to use this one. Even though the mix is actually, the mix itself, like the mix down is pretty terrible. As you can see on the mastering chain, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I have like 9 plugins on the mastering strip, which is terrible. This was back before I figured out limiter 6 and how to use that and everything like that. So it was the mix was pretty bad, but overall the track behind the mix is pretty good. So without further ado, might as well go into this episode here. So the way I actually start this track is with an effect, and I'll play it back just kind of show you what it sounds like. So here we go. So, without playing it back too far, just because I don't want to play through this whole thing, just because I don't really need to. But what I have here is essentially this, I think, and that should be it. So let's see. So, what I have here is I actually have 4 tracks. One is a some sort of vocal build here, I think. Whoops, I forgot to unsolo that one up there. But anyway, I think really long vocal build. Yep, this is a reverse vocal reverb, and this one I believe is similar. Except for instead of being a high kind of thin sound, I have a more big sound. And then this is just the kind of downlifter version of it. So I got this and I basically just reversed it. So you kind of tell that. So essentially, there's these 4 things that are making up this little effect here that goes. And this is just a synthesizer I ran through a whole ton of reverb, and I also did quite a bit of compression on it. But essentially, what I'm showing you here is I've got these several layers that make up one kind of effect. So this is kind of one of the things you could do with effects. You could get layers of multiple different types of effects and kind of chop them up, splice them together, or layer them using EQ to get what sounds like one effect. There's a lot of flexibility with what you could do with effects. I can't possibly go over everything that you could do just because I wouldn't be able to think of everything you could do. Because effects are, you don't have to be too careful about them musically because they're typically things that run in the background. Now, the first thing I want to point out about this effect is that it is very obvious. And the reason why is because it starts the track and it's really loud. So the point of this is kind of stand out, but I'll show you later on some of the effects that I have are a little too obvious, and some of them are in the background just where they need to be. I kind of have one that I'm going to show you in a second, but for now I'll just kind of show you. This one is supposed to stand out because it's what intros the track. So that's kind of one of the things going on. And then I have something else that could be considered an effect. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's this one. So this is just kind of like, it's a bit crushed synthesizer That's just kind of running really fast notes here, just repeating itself. But what this actually isn't so much of a main synthesizer that I would technically classify as a bass or a pad or a lead or anything like that, because there are other things that are taking up that space. This one's just kind of, it's almost like what you consider the high end of the pad, except for it's rather fast and it kind of like dances around in the background, which just makes it more like an effects sound. Okay, which brings me to my first point of ways you could use effects. Now, I talked about in the last video how you could use effects for transitions. This is the major point that I want to touch on by way of effects in this video. And that is, effects are used to fill out your track. Because without effects, typically you'll get what sounds like a very thin track, even though your track might not be thin. Like it might have like 6 pads, a lead, a bass, and then some percussion, but it doesn't really have like effects that are kind of sporadic. They come in and out really often. I'll talk about really often in a second, but they kind of move around, and they provide a lot of variety. If your track doesn't have those, it can tend to sound kind of empty because there's not a lot of movement in the pieces. Now, I said that they come in and out often. That's kind of, you got to be careful about that, because the idea of effects are they play their part, but they don't play it very long. Now that means that you want to kind of you want to have a good amount of effects, but at the same time you don't want to do overkill. So you might want to bring in, like, I don't know, 1 effect every 8 bars, we'll say. We'll just pretend that's a good number. I'm not sure if that'd be actually like the number you should stand by, but that actually does sound about right. So what you'll do is you'll get like what I mean by this is where you could see where effects really stand out in how much variety there is. You might get a synthesizer that just fades in like, but it only does it once in an 8-bar period, and you don't repeat it the next 8-bar section. Instead, the next 8-bar section, maybe you have like a noise downlifter or something like this, where it just goes. So we can see what we've been missing. So send your light. So what you could see there is that my effect for this particular section was the noise build and the downlifter. So I could go up to basically it's just these, I believe, these two. So you kind of see that's like my effect for this particular section. And this one, you could tell that each section I kind of have something. So like for the first one, I have this this part here, that intros the track that we were talking about. Then this second 8-bar part, you could actually tell that I didn't really put quite as much of an effect emphasis on here. I did put this little the vocal build here, you could tell. But that's just because in this section the vocals come in, so I don't want to take too much focus away from the vocals. So if I throw an effect here, it might stand on top of the vocals, which stands my point here, that you don't want to put too many effects in, because like I said, if I were to put in an effect that came in around here, it would distract you from the vocals that come in at this point. So I could kind of show you. I have the vocal build. The moon and stars are the only light to tell us that we're lost. So what I have there is I have the vocals coming in, so I don't want to take away too much from that. So what I do is I leave that first part open here, and then I do the next vocal build right around here, which is. And we can't find the way to be free. So you kind of tell you didn't really hear it. It just kind of came in for a minute. So listen to the vocals. And we can't find the way to be free. So it just kind of, it's almost like it's showing you that the song's still moving, And it's changing. There are things that are coming in and out, and they're developing too. So really, this does, as you can see, a lot of this whole section of videos that I've been doing here is talking about a lot of how things connect together and how you can't leave out a stage of production. In this case, this would be basically your finishing touches stage. Like once you've got the mix down the track and everything like that, you have everything all blended together. Then you add these effects to really flesh it out and just have that extra touch, that extra icing on the cake that really lets the empty spots be filled up and adds a bit more energy to the track as a whole. So I mean, I could go through this whole track and show you all the different things. I think I'll touch on a couple other things, but for the most part, I really want to emphasize the fact that effects are not a particular collection of things. You cannot drums can be effects, synthesizers can be effect, vocals can be effect. I've used all of those so far in the stuff that I've showed you. It's just a matter of, and I kind of also note that this one isn't as much an effect because it goes so long. But it does kind of emphasize what an effect could extend to. But, anyway, this essentially, you can't really encapsulate what an effect is, but an effect can be generally thought of as something that kind of comes in temporarily to kind of make a point. So, you might bring in a vocal build to kind of have a nice kind of sense that you're going to build the track, and the next movement you're going to make is going to be a rising sort of something that adds more to the track. So you could kind of tell here, normally with a vocal build, you'd have the vocal build directly connect to something, so it'd go right into the vocal, but this case it doesn't. The moon and stars There's a space, and that space is left there because we don't necessarily need to make this a riser. It's partially just telling us the next move we make is going to build and add more to the track. And similarly, you could just take something like here. You see that this one goes up and then down. That's just to fill it out. It's just kind of say, hey, we still got stuff here that's going on. It's a great way to keep someone bored from repeating the same thing, because a lot of EDM genres are about repeating loops and not really changing up a lot of those loops. Like you have a lead, and that lead repeats like 4 times before it finally basically just turns off. It doesn't really change as often. Other styles of music, you might have a guitar part that kind of changes a lot more throughout the track. But in EDM, you have a lot more repetition. So effects really, they help you alleviate the repetition and make it so it's not as obvious that the track is repeating over and over and over again. Now, you need to be very careful because it is easy to overdo effects if you have a lot of them. I don't have a lot of effects in my sample library, so it's actually pretty darn hard for me to overuse effects. In fact, you'll notice that a lot of my recent tracks do not have enough effects. And that's just because, like I said, I don't really have a big sample library when it comes to effects. I have a ton of kick drums, a nice collection of snares, and some pretty good collection of hi-hats and a few other drums. But mostly I don't really have a lot of effects. So I don't have a lot of options by way of that, which is why I don't use them as often as I could. But if you have a lot of effects samples, you'll just start dropping them in whenever you feel like your track needs more. Now, that can be okay, but at the same time, you don't want to actually be able to notice the effects as much. You can kind of tell this one was really drowned out. It just kind of like filled it out a little bit. You couldn't hear it all that much. This one was a little too obvious. I'm going to play it back with the track. You kind of hear this vocal build that I've been showing you a couple times. It's a bit too obvious, so if you take a listen. Not as bad as it could be, but it's a little bit, it stands out a little bit more than something, that would be more suited towards the background. This one isn't actually as bad as I thought it was. I remembered it being a little more loud, but I guess I was thinking of this one because this one's pretty loud. But that's beside the point. So you get the whole deal is you need to balance between too much and too little. And yes, you don't actually need to have effects. I was listening to a track recently gosh, I think it was like what, Prayer in C, something like that. I thought it was Prayer in D. I don't remember the name of it for sure. But anyway, that track, it's very minimal and it sounds amazing. But it doesn't utilize too many effects. It uses some. It actually kind of, for the effects, for the most part, I think it uses drums and maybe some noise sweeps, but it doesn't put too much emphasis on filling out the whole track with effects. It just kind of has a really clean, solid mix. So you don't need to worry about having too little effects if you do a really good job at your track and your track is just really standing out. But you can very easily overdo effects if you're just kind of slapping them in wherever you feel like there's a space here, so I should put an effect. No, that's not the case. You should not put an effect if there's a space there. You put an effect if you have a reason for putting it there that feels like it's really helping the track and not just filling up something. Now, like I said, this one is kind of, the purpose of this one is to kind of fill some space, but I placed it there to kind of make some movement and kind of make some just something in the background to kind of give you a little bit sense of extra depth and extra movement, because it just kind of, pushes the track on a little more. And so I really had a thought process going behind it. I wasn't just thinking, oh, there's a gap in the vocals and it kind of sounds dead there, which in fact there's actually not if you listen right around this spot. We can't find a way to be right where these actually play, he's holding a note. So there'd be no point for me to just put it there because there's an empty spot. There's not an empty spot. I'm just kind of putting it there because I felt like I had a need to, because it felt like it really add to the track and it'd really help it. So now, obviously, like I said, this isn't my best track that I've made, so there are some things that I don't think I did perfectly. But I did kind of want to also go over here and show you what I did with the end by way of effects, because it kind of the end is very it's just kind of repetitive, and it seems like it seems like the effects really add to the fact that it's repeating, but it doesn't sound like it's just looping the same thing over and over and over again. So let's see if I can find the part here. I think it's right here. Yeah. Send your So this is pretty much the one of the reasons I chose this track to use for this particular video, but it allows me to kind of show you a variety of things in one section here. So right here, I actually used a synthesizer as an effect here, and you can kind of tell if you listen to this one. So this one in the background, it doesn't stand out all that much in the track if you listen to the track. Whoops. Because the reverb of this one, the big one, it kind of drowns out this one. So this one's purpose is to kind of be something that feels like it's just kind of fading in a little bit and then going away, fading in a little bit and going away. And I'm only doing this over this section right here. I don't actually have this anywhere else in the track that I'm doing it with this synthesizer, I believe. If I could check that. Yep. It's the only place that I'm doing this. So it's only for this 8-bar section, kind of like I told you. You want to kind of section out things so you're not doing too much. And then right here, around this part, I have a noise sweep and then a clap with a lot of reverb. So this is it. So that's my clap. And then I have a noise sweep up here, which I'm not going to play back because it's just a noise sweep. So you kind of see what's going on there. We have this this section here kind of has this this synthesizer in the background. This section here, you get mostly the tail of the reverb for all that, and then the vocals come in pretty loud here. You'll notice. So that means that the vocals kind of switch from being something in the background like they were right here. So that means the effect here is no longer partially the vocals, because the vocals now come to the front and they're almost like a main instrument as opposed to something that you throw in the background to really flesh out the track. So that's kind of why I have this the whole tail going on here. I add the clap and everything, and then later on, we have a couple other things that happen here, like it switches again, and we have an actual vocal. So we have an actual vocal there instead of just like the singing, and then it goes up and we have a riser, which would kind of be this section's effect, and then it goes, and we just get a downlifter for the end of the track. So there's a lot of, you can really see the development in the effects throughout this section. This section is particularly good at it, as opposed to the beginning, where it's kind of, some of them were just kind of put there to just add a little bit of space and a little bit more to the track. Where this one, you can kind of see there's like a development to the effects. And if you take them out of the track instantly does not sound as anywhere near as wide. I would just try to mute them, but I don't know how well that would work, because I'd have to cut the vocals at the part right here-ish. I don't know, I could just split it here. Split, mute that. That was Command M, or no, Control M. There we go. That mutes it. I don't have my shortcut thing going because I wasn't doing many shortcuts in this one. Mute that one, and then I'll just mute this one up here. And we'll kind of play it back without some of the effects I've been using. I'll mute this one too, because that one was an effect. And then other than that, I think that pretty much narrows down so that we kind of take out the effects. And we'll kind of play it back just to kind of hear what it sounds like without the effects. That did a lot more than I actually thought it was going to do. So when you take those out, you really see how the effects help unify the track, and how they really, they're the icing on the cake. They're the extra bit of salt that just takes the track and makes it so it's that much better. So you got to be careful, like I said, to not overdo things. And I can turn these back on here, but actually I just undo everything. There we go. And but you really see, like, when I take out the clap, when I take out the ambient vocals in the background, and when I take out the risers and everything, it just suddenly loses a lot of the flavor to the track. And it's kind of like it's just repeating, and you're waiting for it to be over, and you're waiting for the next section instead of it just like flowing nicely. So that's pretty much what I want to talk about way of effects today. You're like I said, you could use pretty much anything as an effect. It's just about unifying the track, and the effects are not so much part of your track in a sense of building your track in like your sound and your foundation for the track. They're more of something to get that finished track that you're pretty much done with, and just like add the tiny bit you need to just make it so much better. So it's like unify the different sections, and to add a bit of space where you need more space, and everything like that. So they're basically like when I did a video on transitions and effects. It's not a very good video, mind you. That one was kind of old, but I the subtitle there was the transitions and effects, the icing on the cake. And that's really what it is. It just adds so much more to the track. Like when you have cake without icing, it tastes good, but you're like, where's the icing? So that's kind of what effects do. If you do a more minimal style, then chances are you will want to use less effects. Just because they stand out a lot more. But things like trance and dubstep, you use so many effects, and you really have to be careful about placing them because you're using a lot of them. So you need to be careful that you're not like stepping on things and doing too many effects right next to each other, and you don't bring in something too often, because if you repeat the same effect a lot throughout a track, people will get sick of it really fast. So there's there's a lot of balancing that has to go on with effects, but it's kind of like everything in this series that I've been talking about, this little 5-episode series, it's a lot about balancing and getting it so it's like not too much and not too little. Now every single track will vary by way of how much is too much and how much is too little. I mean, if you're doing a minimal track, too much might be like three different effects throughout the track. And too little might be, I don't know, a half an effect, instead of just putting in one full effect. I don't know, but other tracks you might need 18 effects, and too little would be like 10. So it really depends throughout the track. Just like volume, really depends. Do you want the guitar louder or quieter? It depends on what style you're going for. It depends on what kind of track you're doing, and all the different things I covered in this series, But really, I just kind of want to put a little bit more emphasis on effects. Last one is kind of basically touching on effects, but it was more so transitioning, and how I also talked a lot about in that episode how a track will naturally transition if you get the structure right. But this one is really focusing on effects and placement of effects. I can't really tell you where to put your effects just because it depends on the sound. And you really just want to trust your ears and listen. And if it sounds good, keep it. If it doesn't sound good, move it or just pull it out altogether. But really, like I've said probably 100 times in this video, it's a lot about balance. You really have to pay attention to that. And this is a very important part of your tracks, like all the other things I've been covering in this little mini series. So I hope you like this mini series. This mini series was kind of like when I first started, it was like, oh my goodness, I've kind of run out of things to do because I can't do a vocals section anymore. Which, oh by the way, I'm still pending vocals. I don't know if I'm gonna get any at all at this point, but hopefully I'll get a vocalist and I'll be able to do a section on vocals. But until that comes, I'm just going to be doing some other stuff. This one is kind of like, I thought I was going to have vocals by now, but I didn't end up having vocals. So I kind of was like, okay, let's just do a series on building a track, so that, because I know there are some things I missed. Like I talked about mixing, and I talked about using samples, and I talked about tons of other things, but I didn't really talk about how to assemble your track from start to finish. And, I even talked about some music theory, but I didn't really talk about how to make a song from music theory. So that's kind of what this series ended up being. It was a little bit on the fly at first, but I kind of thought out some of the other things I was going to cover. And I hope you guys liked it. Like I said, it was a little bit on the fly, but I think it worked out, and I hope it wasn't too painful for you guys. But anyway, next series is going to be, I think it's going to be 5 parts. I don't think it'll extend to 10 parts. We'll see how it goes. But I'm going to cover a lot about mastering your track. If you don't know what mastering your track is, it's what this basically should be. But essentially, I'll talk about what it is, why you would do it, different ways to do it, different emphasis you could do with it. But it's a world of its own. It's like you have producing a track, you have mixing a track, and then you have mastering a track. And those are all 3 different stages of working on a track that every single track has to go through. And I'll be honest, I am not that good at mastering, but I will share what little I know, just because I know some people are kind of at the point I was several months ago, where I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Let's just compress the snot out of my thing and hope that I can get it loud. But there's a lot more to mastering than meets the eye, and it really takes a mastering engineer. Just like there's mix engineers, there's mastering engineers too. It really takes one of those people to know everything that needs to happen in the mastering stage and to really get it done right. But I'll show you how to do a rough master, everything that you really need to know by way of mastering, in order to in order to get a pretty good master on your final track. So that's the next series. Look forward to that. I really can't wait to do that one because I know a couple people are asking for that one, and I kind of wanted to touch on that too because it's one of the problems that separates a lot of new producers' tracks. Like you could tell how new a producer is kind of by how the mastering is. Like, and like I said, I'll talk about that more later. But anyway, I just want to mention one more thing before ending this video. When I do mastering, I am going to be using Limiter 6. Which is here. I'll actually, in the first video, I talk about where to get it, but if you want to grab that now, just kind of get yourself familiar with it, you could grab that. It's free, and that's the reason I'm using it. I will not, in the Mastering EDM series, I will try not to use anything that's paid, because I don't want to force you guys to get something just so you could learn how to, do stuff. It's kind of supposed to be a free series where you could get, everything you need to know, hopefully, without having to pay any money for anything. So that's kind of the goal of this series. Although I am using something that Logic doesn't have built in, just because I'll show you it right here. This is what it looks like. Just because I feel that Logic does not have good tools for mastering. The compressors are nice, the expander's nice, limiters are nice, but I wouldn't use them for mastering. They're just they don't really work all that well for mastering a track. And kind of like when you're hoping to get a good final product, putting those on top of your entire track just doesn't work well. Logic doesn't handle it quite right. Now, don't get me wrong. The compressors are good for other things, but not for mastering. So that's just my opinion. Don't quote me on that. Kind of get your own opinion from listening to the plugins in Logic. But anyway, I'm going to be using Limiter 6, so you might want to grab that. But the first video of the series is kind of talk about more what is mastering than actually getting into some mastering. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to the following series I'm going to be doing here. But anyway, like I said, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.